I grew up on the Beatles. I don't know about you.
You do know about me. I did not grow up on the Beatles.
Love the Beatles. And when I was about 4 or 5 years old, I used to sit in the floor and bang on my parents' 8-track boxes, because they had cases.
Yeah.
With a set of drumsticks that were not really drumsticks, but they were...
Spoons?
Actually, no, they were drumsticks, but they were from a, like an old, not country, I guess country store, like a general mercantile country store in the mountains that had a lot of different things, and they were drumsticks that were more like toy drumsticks.
Okay, all right.
They were small, but I used to pretend I was Ringo Starr and bang along on the 8-tracks. I thought the Beatles were so cool. But yeah. I had no idea how to play drums. And
you were 5.
I really wanted to play drums as a child, but, you know. Like,
I think drums for parents. Yeah, for
they're
parents.
Intrusive and a big investment, both.
Yep.
So. It's
got a lot of moving parts and a lot of destroyable parts that are supposed to be replaced fairly often.
Yeah, right. So, yeah. And,
thumbs up to the parents that invest in drums for your children.
I always loved music as a kid. The Beatles were definitely one of my first memories as far as, you know, really... Listening along. I think we listened on records and I banged on the 8-tracks. I don't think that the Beatles... I don't think we had Beatles on 8-track, but I can't remember. It was a long time ago. Yeah. You know, when I got... I always loved the Beatles, so when I was a teenager... I had, like, by the time I had 25 CDs, we're going to say 25, but maybe 20, I had every Beatles album.
Oh, wow. So, okay. So,
like, I was buying Beatles CDs, and then I was buying, on the CDs, they had these 2 volumes called Past Masters, 1 and 2, and the Past Masters were their singles that weren't on albums.
Okay.
Or alternate cuts. Like, they had a couple... songs that, like, She Loves You was actually released in German with the Beatles singing it, and they released it.
Really?
They released it, and yeah, so there was like a couple songs, there was like, I think they released an A and a B side that were in, I think, and so it was weird.
Okay.
Those 2 songs were weird to me because it was like, that was probably my first exposure to, the German language in any kind of like
musical format.
Yeah. And I remember that I quickly, in the beginning, you know, as a kid, of course, as a small child, I liked all the catchy stuff. Like, I Want to Hold Your Hand, and I Saw Her Standing There, and, you know, a lot of that stuff. And as I grew older and more mature, I graduated is probably the correct word, but I gravitated more to the middle era of their catalog.
Okay.
Which was more like Revolver and Magical Mystery Tour. And so it's actually interesting that I progressed through them kind of naturally in my lifetime, you know. And then later on, you know, of course, like their more psychedelic influence stuff in their later years, like Abbey Road, became favorites of mine, like a lot of the album cuts on there. And then
for as much music as they put out, they weren't together as long as I thought they had been. No. They wrote a lot, they made a lot of music in a fairly, for me, in a fairly short amount of time, I think.
They had at least 1 album a year.
That's kind of amazing,
you know?
Especially given the caliber of music. Now, I will say this: when I was a child, I do recall listening and driving my mom up a wall singing just the chorus of Yellow Submarine, and I don't know where I got a hold of it, because maybe in school or something. But I remember that, or on some sort of commercial thing or something. But I remember the chorus of Yellow Submarine.
Well, it seems so prolific, right? But, you know, if we think in, like, a lot of the albums were much shorter then. Of course, they had almost probably as many songs, but the songs were, in general, shorter. They were catered to the radio, especially in the early years, many under 3 minutes, 2.5 minutes, 3 minutes at most. And albums in general really only held about 40 minutes of music, or so, give or take, a little bit more, a little bit less.
Well, we learned during the vinyl pressing stage of our albums that only so much music physically fits on a platter.
And then nowadays, even less so, because the more bass that you include on the album, the wider the grooves need to be. So it actually, if you mix an album with a lot of bass, then it's even harder to format on an LP.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah. Oh my goodness. We have
this
a cat.
Is the third cat to make an appearance recently. It's like they're taking turns.
He's not getting in the frame though. I don't think. This is Panda, our black cat. He's actually a shadow tabby cat, but he's extremely vocal. So you'll probably hear him if you don't see him.
Yeah. So anyway, my love of the Beatles was started young, and I came by it honest. And
your mom loves the Beatles, yeah.
And I still hear their music, and it makes me feel a certain kind of way.
Yeah, I really like their music, and I didn't really get into it. I won't say that I am a person who has sat and listened to the entire catalog. But everything that I've listened to in the documentary, because I love a music documentary specific. I like all documentaries, let's be honest about it. But music documentaries have a special place because watching other people and their growth and their journey and like the rapids that they've faced of fame and some mischance in producing and people that handle their money or mishandle it, like it's really interesting to see how an artist rides out the industry. So I find that really intriguing. So over the course of watching the documentaries, the Beatles have had enough of that material that I feel like I know about them more than even I'm familiar with their music, and I appreciate them.
Right, they're so popular that they were, even at the time, like film being what it was in its developmental phases and stuff. I mean, they made movies, and
they were really kind of pushing.
They were probably
things.
one of the better documented bands because they were so popular.
Yeah, and they were pushing on it. They were. I don't think they ever shunned like filmographers or what anybody that was wanting to do interviews and whatnot. I feel like they were really open about a lot.
So one thing about their documentary that I really appreciated was the insight as to how, like the one that Peter Jackson put out, and we're talking more recently.
Is it
called Get Back, or is it called
Get Back? I think, yeah. It's really good. If you haven't seen it, it's definitely really worth watching.
Where they're writing a song though, and they only have bits and pieces, and they mumble lyrics, and they kind of hum parts, and then they're like, and it's real work.
Yeah.
To develop a song and to make it come to fruition.
Yeah.
As opposed to the fake music documentaries, which are like, I'm talking like maybe like the biopics, biopics or whatever they call it, where it's like they did Rocket Man with Elton John, and they did the one with Queen, which I don't remember what it was called.
Is that like the dramatized documentaries you're saying?
It's like, so basically, it's like,
their story, but it's dramatized.
Hey, I got this great idea. And it's like, bump, 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 ba-da-dum, bump, bump.
And 10 minutes
like,
later, there's
that's
a song.
Good.
Yeah.
I know some lyrics. And he just like starts singing the song perfectly, and everybody's in pitch, and everybody's like, it's like this magic happens. It's like,
not that there isn't magic,
but
it just doesn't look like that.
Right.
In my experience, that's not what the magic looks like.
It's like cheesy the way that they do it.
Yeah,
and it kind of, I understand, because like the way that a song's written isn't probably as glamorous.
And there's some
movies
oh my gosh, there's some songs that you really love, and it's got something special. It's just an extra special song, and you end up having to put it on a shelf for months, if not years sometimes, because it's not done. It's not complete, and you don't have the toolbox to make it complete till later sometimes.
It's beautiful that in that Beatles documentary, it was like there was like this, George is fumbling with something, and then it's like he comes across this thing, or he has a little piece. He has a little piece of something, which is later on the Abbey Road record, which wasn't on the record they were recording at the time, but he was in the studio and they were fumbling around with it, and it makes the hair on my arm stand up because it's like I'd consider that probably one of the best love songs ever written, and even though George Harrison probably doesn't get the later years, he probably got a little more due, but he didn't get the same due that John and Paul did. Certainly Paul in the early years, but it's just amazing how stuff it's like that. They got this thing, and obviously they knew it was something good. They held on to it, and even Paul working through Get Back, it's like, wow, this is really cool. He has and even when the lyrics were done, they still kind of had some nonsense lyrics, but they worked, they worked for the song, and they worked through it, and they made it come up, and it's a great song. So
well, I very much enjoyed that documentary, and I've enjoyed learning and doing the song. So
but
go Beatles. No, but
you also have
I have for our SLB book club.
Speaking of bios,
this book was written by one of our friends, Hunter Allen. It's Confessions of a Barefoot Luthier, and I have already completed this book, and Dave is currently reading this one. So it is it's like a compilation. Each chapter, if you will, is a story, and they kind of interweave together to give part of his life experience as being a luthier, like the caregiver and repairer of famous and infamous guitars, as well as like building and his kind of life journey as it paralleled that kind of working journey. It's really, it's humorous, it's vulnerable, it's lovely, just like Hunter. So I've really enjoyed this, and I'm excited to talk to you about it when you're done with it. And then I'm currently reading, because I read several books, but this one has captivated me a little bit. It's called How Not to Die. My friend Squeaky has lent this to me, and it has a companion cookbook, and it goes through different studies. It gives a lot of data, like the whole back portion, like this whole section and more is resource. This is citing your sources. So there's a lot of data that it references into how the body reacts to what we put in it as far as food goes, and how to kind of combat some of the things that we're all faced with when choosing the way that we eat. So I'm really enjoying it, especially because there is so much data, and they'll tell you when they don't have the data they need to be able to definitively say something. So I'm really enjoying it, and I've made some recipes out of the cookbook that Squeaky also lent me, and I've really enjoyed them and kind of delving into a different way of thinking about cooking. So and for those of you that don't know, I very much love to cook, so shifting around my southern ways to a different way of thinking is a challenge, and I enjoy it. So yeah, for the book club folks, and somebody has offered me up some really interesting reading material too that I have to hurry up and finish How Not to Die so I can move into some unpublished works of Robert Hunter, because that's extremely exciting.
Yes.
So on that note, I think the cat needs to go outside. So
I think we need to wrap it up.
Yeah.
For the cat's sake.
For the cat's sake. Y'all have a good week.